You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
I want you to imagine for a second that you're building a house.
Right.
And one day, somebody invents this magical hammer that can just swing itself 1,000 times a minute.
Okay, sounds pretty great so far.
Right. Your first thought is probably like, this is incredible. We are going to build this entire house in an hour. But then you realize something kind of terrifying.
Which is that you still need a blueprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't have a perfect blueprint, if you don't know exactly where the walls are supposed to go, that magical hammer is not going to build you a mansion. It's just going to build you, a very fast, very chaotic pile of splinters.
Yeah, that is a remarkably accurate way to look at where we are right now with all this technology. I mean, the tool is moving at lightning speed, but the blueprint, the actual human intention behind the tool is what really matters.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. I'm really glad you could join us because today we are looking at a stack of sources from the April 2026 editions of the TLDR Product Management newsletter.
Some really fascinating stuff in there this month.
Oh, totally. And the overarching mission for us today is to really explore this massive glaring gap between the hype of AI, our magical hammer, and the reality of how it is actually changing the way we build products, how our teams function, and even who, or I guess what, is actually using the software we make.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the hype makes it seem like AI is just doing everything instantly. But the reality on the ground seems a lot messier.
It is so much messier. I mean, the foundational premise we have to establish here is that despite the breakneck speed of AI development, actual organizational adoption remains, well, remarkably shallow.
Shallow, like people aren't using it.
They are using it, but a lot of companies are essentially just bolting a chatbot onto their existing product, or maybe slapping an AI-powered label on their website and, calling it a day.
Right, like a Band-Aid.
Exactly. But the real impact of AI, the true opportunity, isn't in those flashy outward-facing features. It is actually found in the internal rewiring of how teams work.
Which is fascinating, because when you look at how teams are trying to rewire themselves, they're falling into some massive traps. Like the most glaring one from the newsletter is what I'm going to call the code trap.
Oh, yes. The speed versus quality illusion.
Yes. Companies are mistaking coding speed for product quality. The sources point out that an AI agent using something like Claude Code, for example, can read your entire code base in seconds.
Right. It can process millions of lines of code almost instantly.
And it can spit up features instantly based on that. But here's where I want to push back a little bit. Because code syntax isn't entirely divorced from design, right? If an AI agent reads my entire code base, shouldn't it be able to recognize our overarching UI patterns and just, replicate our taste based on historical data?
That's a fair question.
Like, why can't it just scrape our taste from what we've already done?
Well, what's fascinating here is the fundamental distinction between syntax and empathy.
Empathy, okay.
You are right that the AI can perfectly mimic your historical patterns. It knows how you structure a database query or what CSS classes you use for a specific button.
Right.
But mimicking past syntax is not the same as having design context for a brand new problem. It doesn't inherently know why a user might find a new workflow frustrating.
Oh, I see.
Or why a certain interface feels clunky in the context of a specific task. Empathy, really understanding the human friction, isn't stored in your code repository.
Yeah. That makes total sense. It's like, going back to the tools, it's like giving a power saw to an amateur, right? The faster tool doesn't make you a master carpenter.
Not at all.
That just helps you make a wobbly table much, much faster. So we lack that design context. We aren't innovating. We're just accelerating the creation of bloated, confusing software.
Yes, entirely. And that is why the bottlenecks in product development have fundamentally shifted. I mean, for the last 20 years, the primary bottleneck in tech was execution.
The actual typing.
Exactly. It was the physical, manual typing of the code by very expensive engineers. AI is effectively removing that execution bottleneck entirely.
Which sounds great.
It does, but by removing it, it has exposed the true constraint, which is the thinking bottleneck. Judgment, complexity management, and taste. Those are the new constraints.
So, okay, how do we actually fix that? Because one of the articles had a really interesting antidote for this bloat. It said we need to, quote, start designing in content, not in code.
Yes.
Break that down for me. What does that actually look like in practice for a team?
It means that if explicit context is the new currency, you have to start with the purest form of that context. Before anyone writes a single line of code, or before you prompt an AI to generate thousands of lines of code, you have to do the hard, human work of clear thinking.
Like really mapping out the intent.
Exactly. What is the actual message? What is the core value proposition for the user? What exact words are we using to guide them through this process?
Right.
If you start by designing the content, the narrative flow of the user's experience, you prevent the AI from just generating random features that nobody asked for.
Because you're giving it the blueprint.
Precisely. Using AI to launch a product might seem like a one-day job on paper now, but actual product discipline, refining the idea, making sure it solves a real problem, that still takes deep, deliberate thought.
Okay, so if the code is basically typing itself and explicit context is the real bottleneck, the person whose job it was to just shepherd tickets to engineers is suddenly standing around with nothing to do.
That is the harsh reality for a lot of middle managers right now.
Yeah, I mean, the human role has to fundamentally change, right? This
Yep.
completely alters the traditional product manager role. Because historically, the PM has been this, like, translation layer between the business side and the engineering side.
Right, the go-between.
Yeah, the business people speak in revenue and strategy, the engineers speak in Python and React, and the PM just sits in the middle, acting as a translator.
Precisely. And that traditional translation layer is disappearing because AI is now the ultimate translator.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If I can describe a business need in plain English and an AI can translate that directly into functional code, the traditional middleman who just moves JIRA tickets from one column to another is no longer required.
They're obsolete.
In that specific function, yes. But that doesn't mean the human goes away entirely. It means the human has to move much closer to the metal.
Yeah, and the sources actually specifically mention startups that are doing exactly this. There's one called Gus, it's a Y Combinator company,
Yeah.
and they're building tools to let PMs touch production directly.
Which is a huge shift.
It's wild. I want to make sure we really understand how wild this is. Instead of a PM writing a dense, 10-page specification document, handing it to an engineering lead, and then waiting 2 weeks for a sprint to finish.
Which is how it's been done for decades.
Right. Instead of that, the PM is interacting with a tool like Gus.
Yeah.
They're using their judgment to define the logic, and the AI is immediately generating and deploying the actual code.
Yes.
They're completely removing the gap between the idea and the live product. So what does this all mean? Like, if PMs are touching production directly and AI is doing the executing, are traditional managers totally obsolete?
The managers who only manage process are absolutely obsolete. But the managers who manage vision, they become vastly more important.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
Think of it like moving from being a language translator to being a film director.
A film director, okay.
A film director isn't writing the script, right? They aren't holding the boom mic, they aren't building the sets, but they are entirely responsible for the final output.
Right, they own the vision.
Exactly. Leadership in the AI era is shifting drastically away from directing the day-to-day, step-by-step work. It is now about setting a vision, maintaining an incredibly high bar for quality, managing strategic bets, and crucially filtering out the noise under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
And if that's the new reality, then how you hire has to change completely too.
Oh, fundamentally.
One of the deep dives explicitly states you must hire people who are better than you by judging how they think, not what they know.
Yes, because what you know is basically commoditized now.
Right. In an AI world, the AI has read the entire internet. It knows the textbook answer to everything. So you need people who can teach the rest of the team, people who have specific contrarian ideas, and who elevate the collective judgment of the company.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really fascinating insight from the newsletters about how work actually gets done in an organization.
Okay, lay it on me.
The execution of work doesn't actually run on the official organizational chart. It runs on what the sources call different maps.
Different maps, like hidden networks.
Yes, hidden maps of expertise and trust. It's knowing who in the organization has the specific, hard-earned judgment to solve a bizarre edge case.
Oh, like knowing that Sari in accounting is the only one who actually understands the weird legacy tax code?
Exactly. And when you give these highly capable, trusted people AI tools, you start to see a new operational model emerge. The sources call it agentic coordination, human delivery.
Wait, break that down for me. Agentic coordination, human delivery. Because honestly, that sounds completely backwards to how most people think about AI right now.
I know.
Most people assume the human does the coordinating and the AI delivers the work.
It does sound backwards, but it is the absolute secret to scaling in this new era. AI is absolutely brilliant at navigating the mundane middle layer friction of a company.
The busy work.
Right. Scheduling meetings, summarizing long Slack threads, tracking dependencies across 5 different time zones, pinging people for updates. That is agentic coordination.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that stuff anyway.
Right. And by letting the AI handle all of that friction, it frees the human to focus entirely on the delivery of the vision. The human owns the final outcome.
I see.
But to do that successfully, humans need what one source calls strong opinions, loosely held.
Strong opinions, loosely held.
Because AI can generate 100 different product ideas in 10 seconds. The human must have the judgment to form a strong opinion on which single idea to actually test, and then the humility to pivot instantly if the market proves them wrong.
Okay, that is a massive shift for the people building the software. I mean, we've gone from typists to film directors. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yes.
What if the most radical change isn't who is building the software, but who is actually using it?
This is perhaps the most disruptive concept in the entire stack of materials we reviewed.
It blew my mind. The sources state flat out, your product has a new user, and it is not a human being.
No, it's not.
AI agents are increasingly becoming the primary users of software. And just, think about what that means for a second. For 20 years, the entire software industry has obsessed over beautiful user experiences, or UX.
All design polish.
Right. We want sleek animations, intuitive workflows, buttons with the perfect drop shadow. But an AI agent doesn't care about your drop shadow.
It doesn't even have a screen.
Exactly. It doesn't look at a screen.
Yeah.
It just wants reliable, structured outputs that it can access, evaluate, and act upon instantly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly explains why bizware business software is becoming the dominant frontier for AI.
Bizware.
Yeah. We are conditioned by movies to think of AI innovation as these massive, flashy, consumer-facing applications, like a robot butler.
Right. Something out of sci-fi.
But AI actually thrives in the repetitive, deeply structured system-building layer that powers business infrastructure. The real revolution is happening in the back end.
Where nobody sees it.
Exactly. Agents are talking directly to APIs, application programming interfaces, which are basically just the raw data connections between different pieces of software. They use those APIs to get work done. A human never even looks at a screen.
Which completely upends how we think about getting a user to actually adopt a product. The newsletters highlight this wild concept of invisible onboarding.
Yes.
Usually, onboarding is about making a human user sit through a 5-step tutorial to learn where the buttons are in your app.
Which everyone skips anyway.
Right. But when an AI is the user, the onboarding becomes completely invisible. The AI skips the learning phase entirely because it immediately understands the API. It just delivers the outcome instantly.
Right.
But to do that, to instantly deliver an outcome, the AI needs a massive amount of data. It needs context about your specific business.
And providing that context is the new massive infrastructure hurdle for every company out there. The sources highlight a company called Paragon, which deals with exactly this problem.
Oh yeah, the context pipelines.
Right. An AI agent is only as smart as the context it has access to. So if you are building an AI tool to help a company draft proposals, that AI needs to securely pull data from their Notion pages, their Jira tickets, their Google Drive document.
All at once.
All at once. And it has to do this across every single tenant, meaning every individual corporate customer secure environment, while perfectly respecting complex individual user permissions.
Oh man, so the intern doesn't accidentally access the CEO's payroll data?
Exactly.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare to build.
It is incredibly difficult. Feeding all of that disparate context into what's called a OR-RAG pipeline, retrieval augmented generation, which is basically the system that lets an AI search a company's private documents before it answers a question that is the biggest bottleneck right now.
It's the plumbing.
It's not the sexy sci-fi part of AI. It is the plumbing. But it is the plumbing that makes the entire system function.
And because the plumbing is fundamentally changing and our end users are becoming robots, the entire business model of software is breaking down in real time.
Yes, specifically how we pay for it.
Exactly. How companies charge for things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a company mentioned called Metronome, which is a billing platform that runs the infrastructure for giants like Anthropic and OpenAI.
Yeah.
And they studied 50 different AI pricing models.
50.
50. And their conclusion is basically nobody agrees on anything.
Total chaos.
Complete chaos out there. Like, are we charging by the token, which is basically a tiny fraction of a word the AI processes? Are we selling credit bundles? Is it a flat rate with usage caps?
It is chaos because the fundamental unit of value has completely decoupled from the human seat.
It's human seat.
Right.
The old sauce model.
Right. In the old software as a service model, you charged per human user per month. But if a human isn't logging in, if an AI agent is invisibly pulling data through an API in milliseconds to achieve an outcome, how do you charge for that?
You can't charge for the time spent because it's instantaneous.
Exactly. You have to charge for the value of the outcome itself, or the sheer compute power utilized, which is exactly why we see this chaotic spread of token-based and usage-based models.
It's like opening a gourmet restaurant, right?
Yeah.
But half your customers are robots.
I love this analogy.
And the robots don't want to sit down, they don't care about the ambiance, and they definitely don't want to taste the food. They just walk in, ask the waiter for a JSON file containing the exact nutritional data of the steak, and then they walk out. How do you even charge them? Like, do you charge them for occupying a table they didn't sit at? Do you charge them per kilobyte of data downloaded from the menu? It completely breaks the restaurant's entire economic model.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. And it forces businesses to face a very harsh reality check. If the old models are breaking, how do businesses actually measure value and generate a real return on investment in this new landscape?
Well, I want to push back on the AI hype machine again here.
Yeah.
Because you log on to LinkedIn, right? And every single post is selling AI as this magic instant ROI machine.
Buy our tool, instantly save millions.
Yes. Buy our tool, fire half your staff, become a billionaire. But the sources are saying the exact opposite. One article literally says, quote, AI doesn't create ROI. Organizations do.
Yes.
It argues that AI itself is financially useless unless you are willing to rip up the floorboards of your company's culture and change how you fundamentally operate.
This raises an important question. What does true organizational change actually look like in this context? Because it is certainly not just buying 1,000 enterprise AI licenses and handing them out to your employees.
Right. Here's a login. Go be productive.
That doesn't work. True change is about shifting the culture from isolation to collaboration. There is a great framework mentioned in the sources called campfires, trails, and quests.
Ooh, I like this part.
Right now, a lot of AI usage in companies is people sitting alone in the dark, typing solo prompts into a chatbot to write their emails faster.
Yeah, guilty.
We all do it, but that doesn't create lasting enterprise value. AI works best when it creates campfires, meaning shared context where the AI strengthens team collaboration.
Okay.
It's about building documented trails of how the AI solved a problem so others can follow it. It is turning individual, isolated AI wins into organizational quests.
And to survive the pricing chaos we talked about earlier, you have to actually prove that organizational value to the market, which brings in the concept of positioning. Positioning isn't just your marketing messaging or your clever tagline. Positioning is a hypothesis that you test through sales. It defines exactly why a customer picks you right now over all the noise.
And to know if your positioning is actually anchored in reality, the sources point to a really interesting growth signal.
Winbacks.
Yes, winbacks, winning back customers who previously canceled. The data shows that winbacks are strongest early in a company's life cycle, and they are one of the most honest signals of true product value.
Because they tried the alternative.
Exactly. If someone churns because they think they can do it cheaper themselves, but then realizes they actually can't live without your tool and comes crawling back, that proves your positioning is real.
Right. It proves you aren't just selling AI hype.
Acting quickly on those signals preserves revenue, but more importantly, it validates that your underlying blueprint is actually working.
But measuring that success comes with a massive warning label courtesy of Goodhart's Law. For those who aren't familiar, Goodhart's Law basically states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And the newsletter featured a fascinating analysis from Claude the AI itself, actually warning about what it called metrics malaise.
This is a crucial warning. If you tell an AI that the only goal is to maximize user clicks, the AI will ruthlessly optimize for clicks.
Because it doesn't care about anything else.
It doesn't have empathy, remember. It will generate pure clickbait, it will destroy the user experience, and it will completely ruin your long-term brand trust, all while proudly reporting to you that clicks are up 400%.
Mission accomplished, right as the ship sinks.
Exactly. AI is the ultimate optimizer, which means it will game your metrics perfectly. Therefore, human leaders cannot treat metrics as absolute, unquestionable truths anymore. Great leaders must treat metrics as signals.
Just signals.
Right. They have to interpret the data with nuance, skepticism, and human judgment to ensure the company is actually moving in the right direction, not just sprinting toward a cliff.
Man, so as we wrap up this deep dive today, I want you to just think about your own workday. Look at the tasks you are doing right now. Are you just focused on swinging that hammer faster?
A lot of people are.
Are you just trying to type the code, write the email, or move the Jira ticket quicker? Or are you stepping back to think clearer about the blueprint? Are you building a beautiful interface for a human to click? Or are you designing reliable systems for an agent to pull data? Because the game has fundamentally changed. We aren't typists anymore, we are directors.
And I would leave you with this final thought to mull over. We are moving rapidly toward a world where AI is eventually writing the vast majority of the code.
Yeah.
AI agents are acting as the primary users, and they are invisibly onboarding themselves into complex business platforms. If all of that execution and all of that usage is fully automated, maybe the only true product a company actually sells in the future isn't the software at all.
Wow.
Maybe the only real product is the human trust, the nuanced judgment, and the organizational intelligence that set the whole automated machine in motion in the first place.
Wow. If the robots are doing the building and the robots are doing the buying, human trust is literally the only thing left on the menu. That is something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the hype. Make sure you've got your blueprint before you start swinging that magical hammer, and we will catch you next time.
Spoken Tech for your ears.